Okay then. Hey, man. So, are you a Minuteman? And the answer is probably not. And I'm sorry, but stick with me. Now, everyone wants to have their rifle and their Minuteman gear, and suddenly they're a Minuteman. And the militia is our big thing here. Every able-bodied man's in the general militia. So I would say that you are in the general militia, and so you say, "Hey, I'm a Minuteman," and I say, "No, you're not a Minuteman." You've got to know the history of the concept. The Minuteman was a really distinct member of the militia. Starting early on in the nation's immediately in the nation's founding. I mean, we landed at Plymouth Rock and we founded a militia. But early on in this whole process, the general militia was all the able-bodied men who had weapons and were called upon to defend the community and band together to repel threats and ultimately tyranny. And it was the general militia that stood up at Concord and Lexington and fired the first shots of the Revolutionary War and harried and harassed the British soldiers back to Concord Common or whatever it was, I can't remember. But the Minutemen are a really unique sliver. They're almost the special forces of the militia. And this was a codified thing. This was real. The militiamen were chosen by the leaders of the militia, who were chosen by the militia themselves. And they would turn around and choose the Minutemen. Generally, they were younger men because they were chosen for their strength and their stamina and their reliability and their enthusiasm. And they would respond first, immediately. They would be ready to go within 30 minutes. I know we call them Minutemen, but originally it was 30 minutes with 3 days food, 3 days provision. And some of the earliest ones that we have their required equipment listed includes tomahawks. They say hatchets, but hatchets back then were tomahawks. So at least that's my story and I'm sticking to it. So these young, strong, enthusiastic, reliable men would be the Minutemen, and they would get called up first and they would head out, and then the general militia, the old farts like me, would come up later, or we'd come behind them. So in the modern context, what's that mean? Because we don't, the militia is just not a functioning thing right now. You would think anyone who was willing to even think about being as their role of the general militia would kind of be the Minutemen, because there is no other option. But the Minutemen really are the special forces of the militia, and we don't need to be doing stolen valor. In the modern context, I'm not willing to say because that you're fulfilling your role as the general militia that you're automatically promoted up to the Minuteman. The Minutemen are chosen from the general militia because of their strength, their endurance, their enthusiasm, and their reliability. So for the modern context, the only people I'm willing to call Minutemen are men who are organized and are training regularly. I always think, when I think of these guys, I always think of Pennsylvania State Militia. They've got some videos up. We've interacted with them some. These guys are high speed, low drag. These guys are the special forces of the general militia. They're our Minutemen. There's others. Those are just the ones I'm aware of. I know there's some guys out in Texas and here, that, and others. Shucks, I wish I had his name at the tip of my tongue. We've got a guy who watches some of our videos who does some training for this type of guys, and I just don't have his name right here in front of me. I'm sorry. Juice. I think it's Juice. J-Oos. It's like J space Oos. So J-Oos, post the link for your school again on this video if you watch this. So are you the general militia? Yes, because you're an able-bodied man. Even if you're not like able-bodied, but like even like we've got a guy who comes to some of our meetings who he pulls rear security, and he's real upfront about the fact that that's all he's going to be able to do. But he's general militia. He pulls rear security. He's a neat guy. I'm meeting with him tomorrow morning, as a matter of fact. So even if you're not like able-bodied, as long as the right finger, the trigger finger works, you're good, right? You're general militia. If you want to be that Minuteman, if you want to claim that title, and I don't claim it for myself, but I admire people who live up to it, then you have to organize and you have to train regular. And like I say, if you want to see an example of that, in my opinion, check out Pennsylvania State Militia. There you go. So you're not a Minuteman, you are the general militia. There is a very big difference. It's the difference between being, a regular Marine and a recon Marine. I'm a regular Marine. I'm not a recon Marine. I wouldn't claim to be recon. As much as I admire them and wish I'd been able to be one of them, I wasn't. By that same token, I'm general militia. I'm not a Minuteman. I hope maybe before I get too old, I can claim to be a Minuteman. If I'm able to organize and train and get together with other men and stand up to fulfill this basic function of American manhood, period. But in America, we expressed it to the greatest degree it's ever been expressed. USA, USA. But I'm not there yet, and I'm not gonna do stolen valor by claiming to be a Minuteman when I'm not. There's some interesting information about these guys on the Minutemen, and I mean, you guys know the Minutemen. You've all heard the concept, but it was more organized than what we think of. You know, we think of the Paul Revere poem or something, and you know, just everyone had their musket and grabbed them and ran. But the General Militia was organized, and the Minutemen were even higher, more intensely organized and trained and provisioned inside the General Militia. And if you meet that standard, excuse me, if you meet that standard, that's fantastic, and I respect you for it. But we don't need to water down that standard just because we don't have very many people who do. We need to hold that standard, and maybe some of us can start shooting and trying to attain that standard. And that's why this comes up, because in another, I had a Minuteman gear video, and I mentioned the Minuteman gear video that I'm not a Minuteman. I just used the term Minuteman gear because everyone knows what I'm talking about. And someone asked, well, what's the difference? And that's a fair question. And I think there's a strong difference, obviously. The Minutemen are the special forces of the General Militia. And, you know, if you've ever met special forces guys, and I haven't met a lot of them, but I've met a few, you know, they don't brag about it because they don't have to. I met one time in Norfolk, Virginia. I didn't actually meet him because I was too scared to talk to him. He wasn't like huge, or it was weird. He actually was bald too. But his muscles had layers of knotted muscles. He wasn't like this big bulge guy, but you just saw layers of just like cord. I can't explain it. It's just layered upon layered upon layered. And he just walked just with I won't even say confidence. It was beyond confidence, you know? Like this guy had gone past where confidence was necessary, you know? Some people have to say, be confident, be confident, be confident. This guy, he was in this whole other realm. He wasn't confident because he had no other option but to be comfortable with where he was. This guy had a presence about him that was awe-inspiring. I've met some others who were, you know, there's these tiers of the special forces, and I've met some on the lower tiers that weren't much more. They were still more, but they didn't have much more of a presence than, say, a regular infantryman. And then I've met some like this guy, who I'm not even sure what he was or who he was. I was like this, just walking, just trying to look at. He was PTing, so he probably thought I was gay. He was in his little shorts and everything. But you know, you don't want to claim something you're not. I wasn't that guy, you know. I was just a regular old tow gunner. You don't want to claim to be a Minuteman when you're just General Militia. You want to be a Minuteman, and I admire anyone who wants to aspire to that, but we need to live up to what that is. We don't get to just redefine it to be whatever we want it to be. So if you want to be a Minuteman, here's what I think you need to do. You need to be in shape, because the Minutemen were the strongest of the militia. You need to be dependable. You have to be training, I would say, monthly. Except, I mean, obviously you'd miss sometimes, but generally once a month at least you'd be training, and you need to be well provisioned. You need to have a tomahawk. No, I'm kidding. You know, you need to have a combat load of gear and ammo, and be able to operate independently for up to 3 days before the old fat guys like me catch up to you with the rest of the gear. So there you go, man. We appreciate you. Thank you.